Bonjour, bienvenue sur le VSC projet de l'équipe 4, installation nucléaire en France.
This is France, and yes, this is considered upside down, but the Earth is round, so what is up and what is down? We thought we'd have some fun with perspective while we were doing this project. Okay, let's learn about France. Currently, France produces 78% of its total energy through nuclear power. Because of their wide network of nuclear power plants, France is able to generate so much electricity that it exports a good amount to Europe, netting France 15 billion euros per year. The question is, where does the uranium come from? Up until 2011, France domestically mined its own uranium from the Limousin region of France. Domestic mining made sense since France was intent on maintaining a closed nuclear fuel cycle. However, with most of its uranium depleted, France had to look elsewhere. Much of the uranium comes from the Areva-controlled uranium mining site in the Saskatchewan province of Canada. Areva extracts 4,500 tons of uranium per year and ships it off to France for nuclear enrichment and eventually energy production. France also works closely with the Société des Mines d'Azalik in the Niger, a former French colony. The extraction company, also known as Samina, exports 3,200 tons of uranium per year to France. After mining in Canada and Niger, the uranium extracts eventually reach the shores of France.
France began its nuclear energy program in 1973. The first of these power plants were the Fessenheim and Bougie power plant. In operation since the 1970s, these two power plants have been cited by domestic anti-nuclear power groups as lacking the safety measures necessary to prevent a Fukushima-style disaster. You'll notice that each tan Lego brick represents 100 megawatts of energy produced. Fessenheim produces 880 megawatts of energy, while Bougie produces 910. Dampierre hosts 4 nuclear power plants generating 890 megawatts of energy. Gravelines hosts 6 nuclear power plants generating 910 megawatts of energy. The Tricastin, Blaise, and Saint Laurent power plants also produce 900 plus megawatts of energy. Cruas was the last nuclear power plant built to produce approximately 900 megawatts of energy. Paluel was the first nuclear power plant to exceed 1,300 megawatts of energy in France, as indicated by the red Lego brick. Saint Alban produces 1,335 megawatts of energy. Flamanville produces 1,330 megawatts of energy. Cattenom produces 1,300. Nogent-sur-Seine produces 1,310 megawatts of energy. Belleville produces 1,310 megawatts of energy. Penly produces 1,330 megawatts. Golfec produces 1,310 megawatts. Choose was among one of the first third-generation reactors and produces 1,500 megawatts of energy. Sivox is another third-generation reactor, producing 1,495 megawatts of energy. France's 58 nuclear power plants generates a total of 493.73 billion kilowatts every year.
Now, France must use up a lot of nuclear fuel with those 58 nuclear power plants. What does France do with all that spent nuclear fuel? There are generally 2 options considered by nations with nuclear power plants. The first option is long-term disposal. This requires finding interim and long-term storage for spent nuclear fuel. Long-term storage is necessary because of the staggering amount of years required for the uranium and other nuclear fission products to decay to a safe and stable state. This is not the option that France has currently chosen to undertake. Instead, France has opted for the reprocessing route. Rather than find long-term storage for its spent nuclear fuel, France has decided to invest in spent nuclear fuel reprocessing. Because spent nuclear fuel still contains 95% of reusable uranium that can be converted to usable fissile material, France has decided to reprocess instead. It allows France to reuse the fissile materials still viable for nuclear energy, as well as reduce France's need to come up with a long-term solution to its eventual nuclear waste. While reprocessing does reuse significant amounts of the uranium fuel rod, nuclear wastes are still processed in the long term and still need to be disposed of. As part of France's reprocessing goals, they have developed plants with large processing capabilities aimed to reduce the volume of nuclear waste and ensure the safety of the spent nuclear fuel waste and reprocessing plants. Currently, 70% of France's electricity is from reprocessed nuclear fuel. One site of uranium reprocessing is the Areva NC site. This, in operation since 1976, engages in all steps of the uranium fuel cycle: conversion, enrichment, reprocessing, recycling, and storage. The Mavisy and Pierrelet nuclear power plants, operated by Comerex in the Rhone Valley region, convert uranium concentrates to uranium hexafluoride, UF6. In more recent years, Comerex has invested in reprocessing spent nuclear fuel rods. The Eurodip plant enriches the uranium for France's nuclear power plant. The Georges Best II plant, opened in 2010, has the capacity to produce 7.5 million separative work units, or SWUs, every year. These SWUs make up the pellets in nuclear fuel rods. La Hague Nuclear Reprocessing Plant is the largest reprocessing plant in the world, which shows France's commitment to reprocessing versus long-term disposal of spent nuclear fuel. It is able to reprocess 1,700 tons of spent nuclear fuel each year. It is capable of extracting 99.9% of plutonium and uranium for recycling, leaving 3% of the used fuel as high-level waste. These high-level wastes still need to be stored for long-term disposal. In 2006, France passed the Nuclear Materials and Waste Management Program Act. The act is aimed at emphasizing deep geological storage as part of France's solution to spent nuclear fuel. While France does intend to keep spent nuclear fuel reprocessing as a mainstay of its nuclear policy, France wants to begin looking for solutions to its nuclear waste problem. This plan includes low-level waste and medium-level waste, storage as solins, mobiliers for very low-level waste. They have also taken the Agence Nationale pour la Gestion des Déchets Radioactifs, or otherwise as known as ANDRA, with researching and then building a deep borehole disposal site in Bure. Creusel Mine, located in the Limousin region, was once the site of domestic uranium mining. It is considered another possible location for long-term disposal. Andra's Centre de la Manche facility holds 427,000 cubic meters of low-level waste and intermediate level waste. Andra's Morvilliers disposal facility holds 6,500,000 cubic meters of very low-level waste. As previously stated, the Creusel mine and Bure are being investigated as potential deep borehole disposal sites for France's long-term disposal of spent nuclear fuel.
Now, what happens when France runs out of space to store its spent nuclear fuel? With its 50-plus reactors, can France store and/or reprocess its nuclear spent fuel? Guess not. A global solution? Why not return the spent fuel from whence it came? Like Canada. Areva, who currently operates the uranium in Canada, could consider deep borehole disposal in the same uranium site to store the spent nuclear fuel permanently.
Another option, why not send the spent nuclear fuel via truck and train to a country that France is currently helping to develop nuclear power? Like China, with some French assistance, China has built 17 light water reactors. It's currently building 28 more and has 58 more planned on the way. With 96 reactors worth of spent nuclear fuel needed to be stored, France should cooperate with China in seeking out deep borehole sites in China, and then jointly bury them in China's vast territory. It's a deep borehole solution that can benefit both France and China. France helps with funding and research, and China ultimately stores the spent nuclear fuel for a modest fee. In the short term, France will continue to reprocess its spent nuclear fuel. However, France will recognize that deep borehole storage will likely be more cost efficient. While France can store its spent nuclear fuel at Bourret, France, with 58 reactors worth of spent nuclear fuel, France has a better long-term solution in storing spent nuclear fuel in Canada and in China. What are the potential nuclear safety and security risks? Despite France's heavy reliance on nuclear power, it has an aging nuclear power plant system. On average, the nuclear power plants in France are 26 years old. The cost of maintaining these aging nuclear power plants has cost France 3.7 billion euros. Many question whether this is the best use of France's resources. Evidence of these aging facilities can be found in the Tricastin, where radioactive fluid leaked out from the facility and contaminated the Rhone River, and 100 of its employees. At Flamanville, the nuclear power plant roof collapsed, exposing barrels of radioactive waste.
Because of these considerable risks, several groups have formed to combat nuclear energy in France. Greenpeace and Sortir de Nucléaire are both working actively to eliminate nuclear power plants in France. Greenpeace showed how easy it was to cross the airspace of the Bougie nuclear power plant and drop smoke canisters. These could have easily been bombs or an aerial terrorist attack. In the Nogent-sur-Seine nuclear power plant, Greenpeace activists walked onto the nuclear power plant facility and unfurled a Greenpeace banner across one of the reactors. The incident was intended to highlight the security risks of the nuclear power plant. Greenpeace activists also crossed the restricted airspace above the Hage reprocessing plant.
We still believe that nuclear power is a viable option for France. However, France does need to consider how it will seriously address the spent nuclear fuel problem. We also recommend that France remedy the safety and security risk at its aging nuclear power plants.
Now, on behalf of the Virtual Science Team for USA and Virtual Science Team for Russia, we thank you for your time and attention.